Hello, True Crime Stories family. Welcome. The McClatchy Investigation interviewed different accident victims who sold their future annuities in exchange for instant cash, and they found a lightly regulated industry that targets young accident victims who now regret their decision to sell. These young South Carolina victims are being re-victimized, like in the case of Grace. We will take a deep dive into her story. Grace survived a horrible accident as a child and won a large structured settlement. However, she sold her future payments over and over again out of desperation. The investigation caused an outrage that called for a reform in this industry, and a bill was passed to protect accident victims from being exploited and re-victimized, like Arthur Badger, an Allendale County resident who hired the since-disgraced Hampton attorney Alex Murdaugh after a UPS truck pulled out in front of him and his wife in 2011, taking her life. Alex won Badger a big payout in the form of a structured settlement, but much of it was funneled to Alex and his creditors. Arthur ended up selling his children's future annuities for pennies on the dollar. Senate Judiciary Chairman Luke Rankin feels like the state needs to rein in companies that take advantage of South Carolinians who win lawsuits that provide annuities called structured settlements following some horrible tragedy. South Carolina has effectively become the playground of the money changers of structured settlements. We've been seized upon by folks who are preying on the uninformed, the folks who have suffered a dramatic loss, oftentimes including mental health and brain function. Luke Rankin filed the legislation in reaction to the McClatchy Investigative series that detailed the victims' exploitation. The state Supreme Court reacted by removing all structured settlement cases from the hands of the state's 23 governor-appointed masters in equity, as well as special referees who hear such cases in the remaining counties. Rankin publicly thanked Chief Justice Donald Beatty for his order shifting oversight of such cases to circuit court judges. The Senate Bill S-259 would ban intentionally misleading advertisements and so-called hot checks, that is, mailed checks that become loans, by simply endorsing the back, agreeing to the terms in tiny print, and depositing it. It would also require a hearing on a proposed transfer of annuities and for a judge to question the settlement winner in person. Companies that want to buy structured settlements would need to register with the Secretary of State's office. Sue Berkowitz, an attorney who advocates for the poor, feel like the proposed rules would have prevented Grace, who she represents, from being robbed of her entire settlement following a train accident that left her with a traumatic brain injury. In less than 2 years, $1 million was picked out of her pocket by more than a dozen loans. When Sue saw the emails Grace received from the buyers of her settlement, it was astounding how she had no understanding of what was going on. Grace's structured payments were taken in exchange for as little as 5 cents on the dollar. At one point, she thought she had an attorney, not realizing the lawyer actually represented the company buying her settlement. However, the victims need another bill that really protects them from being exploited by these predatory companies that buy these annuities. Some kind of reform or bill that regulates the exchange rate between the buyers and sellers. There should be a minimum threshold for the exchange rate or a minimum percentage that the buyer cannot go below when making an offer to the seller to buy their future annuity. This could stop these companies from robbing their victims who need and deserve their settlement money. After a train crashed into her mother's car, Grace was airlifted to the hospital and placed into a medically induced coma. Doctors drilled a hole through the 12-year-old skull to relieve the pressure building around her brain. She was in a coma for nearly a month, followed by physical therapy, relearning how to walk, talk, and feed herself. The train company eventually settled Grace's personal injury lawsuit, with most of the proceeds placed in a structured settlement, a type of financial arrangement with money to be paid to her in monthly, tax-free installments for the rest of her life. The money would provide her a steady income because her traumatic brain injury was likely to limit her ability to earn an income in the future. But Grace, now 30, has stopped receiving her monthly checks and won't see another dime until she's at least 60 years old. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Several private companies were allowed to purchase Grace's future payments in exchange for giving her immediate cash. South Carolina judges were supposed to be looking out for Grace's best interest, but they signed and gave permission to the companies buying her future payments in a series of deals. In the last one, a judge signed off on allowing Grace to give a company more than $87,000 of her future payments for about $8,500 in immediate money. So sad. Grace spent the money quickly. Now, short on cash and with limited job prospects because of her injuries, she may lose her home and faces an uncertain future. Each year, hundreds of South Carolinians who receive structured settlements sell their future payments and forfeit their stable financial futures, the McClatchy Investigation has found. Safeguards was put in place by the state legislature to protect sellers, including a requirement that judges sign off on the deals will hopefully stop very few from gaining approval. More than 94% of the deals that reached a hearing before a judge between 2014 and 2021 were approved. While the deals are legal, there are questions about how closely they are scrutinized by the courts. If the judges had closely reviewed Grace's case, for instance, they would have learned that the girl who once excelled in advanced classes qualified for special education services after the train wreck. Her IQ tested in the first percentile, and at home she had short-term memory loss, which remains one of several challenges. "I usually write stuff down so I'll remember it," Grace said in a recent interview. "I be forgetting stuff so fast, like when my doctor appointments are and everything." Meanwhile, what the fast cash sellers receive often doesn't account for much. The newspaper analysis of more than 1,400 of these deals approved between 2014 and 2021 in South Carolina found sellers received, on average, lump sums worth about 25% of the sold future payments. More than $228 million in future payments were exchanged for less than $58 million in lump sums. The discounted present value of those payments, a calculation based on a federal rate that assumes money in the future, is worth less than the present was estimated at more than $157 million. The present value was redacted from public records in many cases, preventing the newspaper from listing it on several deals mentioned in this series. The immediate money doesn't last long. Many sellers interviewed by McClatchy say they now regret their deals and are in worse shape financially as a result. Public records show many have faced evictions and other financial hardships. These people, they've been horribly injured, the system is trying to protect them, and now they're just getting hammered, said Eric Vaughn, executive director of the National Structured Settlement Trade Association, which represents the consultants, attorneys, and insurance companies that help set up these settlements, feel like the deals are just terrible. Maybe 1 in 10,000 might help somebody stave off a missed mortgage payment, but the rest of them are just awful, and they leave them completely destitute when it's all done. McClatchy found that a judge first approved one of these deals for Grace in August 2018, transferring $22,800 in future payments for about $6,500. She had recently used some of her settlement money to buy a house placed behind her mom's house on the same property. But she needed the money to complete its septic tank, Grace told the judge. "I was going through so much stuff trying to finish it and everything. I thought the money would help me." But the deal was just the beginning. Grace signed agreements with factoring companies 16 more times during the next 3 years, and every deal was approved by a judge or special referee. Her 17th and final deal was approved. Afraid of losing her house, Grace finally broke down and told her mom what she'd done just before the holidays. But it was too late. December 2021 was the first month she didn't receive any of her monthly structured settlement payment. That check for $1,890.89, set to arrive in Grace's mailbox on the 14th of every month, was instead directed to a P.O. box in Philadelphia, Orlando, or Woburn, Massachusetts, through November 2051. The future payments sold totaled $692,110. Grace's mom, Jocelyn, thought her daughter's structured settlement was designed to protect her from throwing away the money, but obviously it didn't. The judge didn't serve a purpose because anyone with common sense can see that something was happening that wasn't supposed to.